So let's try to talk about Arsenal since Arsenal is your team. So what can you say?
Don't make that so public. I don't want to wear that so frontally.
I
I feel like I would like to know. Like I feel like I've been pretty unbiased.
No, yeah.
If someone hadn't heard that just now, that they might not be able to.
No,
to
I mean
exactly.
it's it's safe to have your own team. Don't be like me,
Yeah, you jump ship for everyone starts winning.
That's what I love doing.
Yeah.
But is should we be concerned about the state of Arsenal, given that Arsenal of this season is not Arsenal of last season, right?
Yeah.
And should we? Well, for me personally, when I saw the lineup, I actually liked the lineup for once since Arsenal started. But them playing against Tottenham and they had a draw. What was the question? What's the question to ask? And what are all the responses? They playing in Champions League is gonna be way different, right?
Yeah.
And what do you think about their performance? Should we be concerned? What are things that we can get to ameliorate in the games, or whatever the Arteta needs to do?
It's still early in the season, but it's not super early anymore. It's no longer
six games
in. So I mean, there's still a lot of room to go ahead and like. That's also the thing. We've had this conversation on this podcast where name one team that is performing as perfectly as they are expected to or have in the last 3 or 4 years. I can't think of a single team.
City.
No. Well, they're not playing as consistent. Like they are undefeated, but like they're not as consistent and as fluid as they were with Gundogan.
Okay.
Like they still are in a transitional period of what they expect themselves to be. They are still playing well. They're still the best team in Europe. I'm not saying that they're not, but they're nowhere near as good as they were just last season.
Yeah.
As treble winners,
Mhm.
they still likely will not win the treble this year, just statistically speaking. But even they are not playing as well as they did last season. So every single team, it seems like, has had a bit of a slow get up, and I think the first team to really stick the landing and figure out who they are more consistently overall, especially with where they were last season, was Liverpool.
Yeah.
Because they did not have a very good season last year, and they've come out the gate very quickly this year and rectified a lot of the mistakes they had.
Yeah, I feel like each game they're fixing every
like
little
small
pieces.
Adjustments every single time.
So
whereas every team last year that was playing at like a peak or what have you, they're not quite there yet. So it's kind of been a role reversal. I do think that Arsenal miss Granit Xhaka more than they understand.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing a lot of thankless tasks in the midfield. It would have been nice to see him have one more season there where Declan Rice is not the only person playing the dirty cleanup, but also Fabio Vieira. I've told you this as well.
Yeah.
It seems like he's better off the bench.
Yeah.
Kind of like how Trossard comes in off the bench, and having those two on the left fresh, that really does seem to make a difference. Fabio Vieira did not look very effective on the ball this week, but I also think that it hurts not having an energetic Martinelli or a technically methodical Trossard in the top left. Gabriel Jesus is not a winger.
Yes, true.
He's also not a striker.
Yeah.
He is something in between, but I don't think that he's as effective on that wing. But they had no other options, and so that's what you kind of have to do. I think even though he's not playing his best, if you're going to make the experiment effective, you might need to you would think that the answer would be, okay, Havertz out, Vieira in, because Vieira comes in late and makes an immediate impact. Part of the reason that he makes an impact is because he comes on late. He's fresh.
Yeah.
It might make some people's stomachs turn, but like maybe you do need to just start Havertz and ride that wave out and
until he gets to that point.
Until he gets to that point there. And you just need to tell him, if you're gonna go over the fucking line, if we're like, we need to be able to pass the ball to you.
Yeah.
You cannot hide behind defenders.
You
can't think that Arteta hasn't had that conversation. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I feel like what you're saying right now, I feel like that's kind of what Arteta is envisioning. That's why he keeps putting him in the game, trying to build his confidence, trying to make him understand that, hey, you gotta be looking for open spaces when you go over the line or the final third. You gotta want to create spaces and also make plays. Right now he hasn't yet found his mojo or his rhythm. But that's interesting. I wouldn't have substituted Jorginho for Rice.
Rice is
Why?
and so Rice did get hurt. He has a back issue that happened around halftime. And Partey is still not 100%, but Partey will be 100% by the Man City game in 2 weeks, I think. Actually, Martinelli, Trossard, Rice, and Partey are expected to all be back 100% for the Man City game, which is very good for that side if that's what you're looking for. Also, a draw against a Big Six team, even at home, can be acceptable at times.
Yeah.
Especially early in the season where no one's figured out really where they are yet. And frankly, just because it's your London rival, you're allowed to say that they're playing well.
Yes.
And both teams did not look as good as they can be, or they've even shown that they can be this season. They both had sloppy games. Arsenal, there's no excuse for conceding a draw when you were up twice.
Yes.
You were consistently ahead. You did play a little bit better. The Maddison-Son duo
It's
obviously working very well.
Yeah.
That's their biggest asset right now. That's their biggest continuity. Romero was very shaky, but also Basuma and Sarr in the middle were having a lot of trouble dictating the flow of the game, and that should have been exploited a lot more. They did not have a very good game, but Maddison and Son played absolutely outstanding, and that's what kept them in there.
Well, it depends. But when you watch the second half of the
Arsenal shut off completely.
You can see Sarr and Bissouma. They kind of had instances where they dictated the tempo, and you can see feeding Son too.
Basuma had a better game than Sarr overall.
Yeah, definitely.
He definitely picked
so
it up.
And the the Maddison and the Son combination is really amazing, and it's interesting because he's really lethal. Yeah, and very, very clinical. And another thing is that transitioning to the 9 has been really effective for him as a player, and even in the sense of maturity. He didn't take extra touches when it wasn't supposed to. The right pass at the right time, and more important, finishing when.
And it's a very self-aware thing as well, because he had several years where he was very good on the wing with Kane on the inside, and he's still quick. I'm not saying that he's not, but the older that you get, the less pace that you're going to end up having. And so they've sort of transitioned him at the right time, where he still has some good pace, and he's not losing confidence playing on the wing and wondering why it's not working. But also, he's not really competing with anybody for goals.
Yeah.
Harry Kane he's always a very dynamic player in terms of he can pass the ball off, he can take the shot for himself, but a lot of times if Son would miss a chance or two, it looked like the offensive movement would then prioritize Harry Kane and leave Son kind of just hanging out, whereas Maddison is now part of that build-up, and it's like Maddison does all of the layoff passes that Kane would do up top, and is not expecting to get the ball back for goals. Like, it feels like the roles are just more defined. It's not it can be Son, it can be Kane. They're both going to pass to each other, but also take shots for themselves. It's like, no. It looks like Maddison is clearly just that number 10, kind of that maestro.
Yes.
And Son is the finisher, and they know exactly what they need to do, and they're not cross-streaming their priorities and their skill sets and kind of becoming unsure of what they need to do. They know exactly what they need to do, and that's why they're doing it very well.
So
also, David Raya.
Yeah.
I think we can say this really quick, and it's early in the season again, but his save just at the end of the first half, that laid out hand, that's got to be, by the end of the season, that's got to be one of the saves of the season, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be top 3, top 5, somewhere around there, because Alisson had a very good save again in the West Ham matchup the same day. But
Areola did excellent too.
Yeah.
But what about I really want to see what about the right side, Arsenal right side, because Tottenham had 48% of attack, or most of the attack were directed towards the right side.
Yeah.
And would you get over there? You have Zinchenko.
On the right, it's Saka and
Saka and
and Odegaard as well.
So is there a concern, or is there things to adjust? Because if you can't be playing like that in the Champions League, given those spaces that you're letting, teams that are really, really clinical and good, and don't let yourself to be scored upon, it's gonna be difficult to either come on or draw.
Yeah.
So
I think that it's because a lot of it is, and when I say Odegaard, I don't mean that it's his fault that he's a bad defender, but Arteta's really experimenting with this mobile midfield.
Yeah.
Even though Havertz didn't start, you're expecting him to be right on the defensive line and just stand there, but you're really expecting Odegaard to ride up as an 8 that transitions into a 10.
Yeah.
And I do think that leaves some exposure because he still needs to be creating chances up front, and that kind of leaves that leaves that midfield open a tiny bit. And Saka's a hard worker. He's not the best defender.
Yes.
But I would still say for a forward, he covers well.
Yeah.
He covers as well as I think you can expect that first line of your defense to actually cover. But yeah, and I can see that. And Ben White is also a hard worker. He's not the most agile.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the most quick to get back.
Yeah.
But he's also he doesn't run into spaces that pull him out of the play either.
Yeah.
I think that they really exploited that transition of Odegaard. And yeah, I think that they really wanted to boss the midfield. Tottenham did, and it didn't always work through the center of Sarr and Basuma having to find passing channels in the dead center of the park.
Yeah.
They seemed dead set on that in the first half, and that wasn't quite working. They mixed it up a little bit in the second half when Arsenal ran out of steam, and that seemed to make all the difference.